All right, let's jump right into a really personal crisis of faith. What happens when you feel that deep need for something spiritual, but you just can't connect with the idea of God that you're supposed to believe in? Today, we're going to break down an Islamic scholar's answer to that very problem, and honestly, it's a perspective that might really surprise you.
So this is the question that kicks the whole thing off. It's from someone who calls themselves a deist, and they're in this tough spot. They feel a spiritual void, but also a total emotional disconnect from the concept of God in Islam. It's a dilemma that I think a lot of people can probably relate to, no matter what their background is.
Okay, so let's start by really unpacking this spiritual conflict. The source material makes it super clear this isn't just some intellectual puzzle. No, this is a deep, personal struggle happening at the very core of who this person is.
Now, what's so fascinating here is the paradox, right? This person finds real, actual comfort in a core Islamic phrase, Bismillah, which means in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. And it works. It literally makes their fear go away. And yet there's this block. They can't connect with the very Allah whose name is bringing them that peace. This is the absolute heart of the problem we're digging into.
And here's where the whole argument takes a really sharp turn. The text suggests the problem isn't a lack of faith, and it's not some kind of emotional failure, not at all. Instead, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of what God even means in this specific context.
The diagnosis is pretty blunt. You're not actually struggling to connect with Allah. You're struggling to connect with a generic, self-made idea of God, which, from this perspective, is not the same thing at all. This completely pivots the discussion away from feelings and straight into definitions. And this slide just lays out that core difference perfectly. On one side, you've got Tanrı, a Turkish word for a sort of generic God. This is an idea that's born from our own personal reasoning. It's vague, it's imagined, and ultimately it's a man-made concept. But on the other side, you have Allah. This isn't a concept we invent. It's one that is revealed, one that introduces itself through Scripture as the one specific Lord of everything that exists.
To really drive this home, the text points to the bedrock of Islam, the Declaration of Faith. It doesn't just say, hey, there's only one God. It actually starts with a negation. There is no ilah, and ilah here means any object of worship, any man-made idea of a God you can think of, except for Allah. You see? The whole structure of the phrase is meant to wipe the slate clean of all our other concepts before affirming the one specific revealed reality.
So if the concept of Allah is this specific and revealed, well, it kind of follows that belief has to follow a specific path too. The logic here is that it's not really about your personal feelings or what you intuit. It's about sticking to what was revealed.
The scholar uses this short chapter from the Quran, Surah Ikhlas, as the prime example. This is presented as Allah defining himself directly. It's short, it's clear, it's absolute, and it leaves zero room for our own interpretations or imagination. The command is to believe in this very specific definition.
And this leads to a really powerful question that the author poses. Think about it. If any kind of personal, sincere belief in some higher power was good enough, then what was the point of revelation? Why send prophets and holy books if a God we just make up in our heads was already acceptable? From this point of view, revelation exists precisely because our human concepts just aren't enough.
And here's the brilliant part. The whole theological argument circles right back to that initial personal problem. The fact that saying the specific name Allah brings comfort is held up as proof. The scholar is basically saying, see, it's the revealed concept that has power and brings peace, not the vague, imagined God that you can't connect with.
Okay, so get ready, because the argument is about to take a seriously provocative turn. The analysis doesn't just try to correct the person's understanding of Allah, it completely redefines their own label of deist, but from within an Islamic theological framework.
So get this radical redefinition. From this specific theological viewpoint, deism isn't just some philosophical position. No, it's seen as a form of shirk, which is the gravest sin in Islam. Shirk means associating partners with God. So deism gets framed here as a kind of arrogance, like trying to tell the Creator that his own revelations just weren't necessary.
So why such a heavy definition? Well, the reasoning goes like this. First, to reject revelation is seen as directly contradicting God's will. And second, it means you're putting your own reason above divine guidance, which in effect is elevating yourself. In Islamic terms, this is described as making your own ego, your nafs, a partner with Allah.
So after this really intense diagnosis and this pretty radical redefinition, what's the solution? Where do you go from here? Well, the text wraps up by laying out a very clear path forward for someone struggling with this exact problem.
The path forward is laid out as a three-step process. First, you have to consciously let go of that flawed, generic concept of God. Second, you actively embrace and accept the belief in Allah exactly as He has revealed Himself in the Quran. And according to the text, the result of correcting your belief is finding that spiritual peace and resolving that conflict you started with.
And the final word from the author is completely unambiguous. The assertion is that true salvation and spiritual peace can only be found by sticking to what they define as authentic Islam, the path of the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad. For them, there's just no middle ground.
You know, this whole breakdown leaves us with a huge, fascinating question to chew on. The scholar gives an internal theological definition of deism that's probably completely different from how a deist would define themselves. So it raises this broader issue. Who gets the authority to define a system of thought? Is it the people who live by it, the adherents, or is it the people who analyze and critique it from a totally different framework? It's a really crucial question to think about whenever we see different worldviews collide.